What up, family? What up, family? What up? What up, family? See.
You are now listening to CTR Media Network.
What up, family?
The Vera Thomas Show. The Vera Thomas Show. The Vera Thomas Show. The Vera Thomas Show. Let's talk about it. 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 On the Vera Thomas Show. Let's talk about it. Yeah.
Hello. I am excited to be here today with my guest, Valda Ford. And I'm going to pull her up and we are going to just have a wonderful conversation. How are you today?
Oh, I am well. I am blessed and highly favored and happy to be here.
And I am elated to have you. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a few minutes and read over a little bit. Your bio is so extensive. You have done so much. And I am so honored to have you here with me today. I'm going to share just a little bit because I want you to be able to share even more after I read a little bit about you. But there's so much. This woman is awesome. Absolutely awesome. She has a master's in public health, a master's, and also she's an RN, and she'll tell us more about her education. And she's coming from very modest beginnings. She has defied the odds and traveled to all parts of the globe to over 60 countries on 6 continents. She has worked with Fortune 50 executives, Afghani teachers, African tribal chiefs, Buddhist monks, and a host of servant leaders in all parts of the world. She worked in refuge camps across Asia and Africa to develop sustainable initiatives to improve health in the most restrictive and dire circumstances. Valda's ultimate goal in life was to become a writer of Harlequin romance novels. But God had another plan. He had another plan. He knew that there was a greater, better work, even though she did author a romance novel, which we're going to talk about. But now she is a consultant, trainer, and expert working to improve the lives of the most vulnerable in our world. Over time, she has served as a consultant to the director of the National Institutes of Health. She's been trained and certified by the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, has been funded by the United States Agency for International Development to replicate her sustainable programs in refugee camps from Ghana to Sri Lanka to Sierra Leone, and has worked in Afghanistan to assist in helping nurses and teachers resume their education and vocations after the fall of the Taliban. She is a award-winning speaker, a past TV show host, a current podcaster on infant and maternal mortality reduction, and is a frequent guest on TV and radio. And I am so honored, so honored, so honored to have you here with me today. So honored. And I'm telling you, oh my God, you have done so much. And whether you know it or not, I actually pulled up some of your books, including the romance books. So we'll be talking about that. But first, I want you, because I know you're a nurse and you're heavily involved in preventative kinds of things, and so I want you to just share with our audience a little more about you and what has driven you and caused you to have the purpose and the passion that you have.
Well, thank you, Vera. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here today. And it's interesting. I never wanted to be a nurse. I was determined that I would not be in a profession that made me stand up all day long after working in my mom's beauty shop when I was growing up. But my younger son had a heart problem at birth, and my frustration with the system trying to get people to listen to me led me to understand that I had to develop their way of speaking. I had to understand their language. I had to develop a lexicon that worked for them. And I went to nursing school, in essence, to be able to talk to the healthcare providers. And over time, that led me to after I finished school and found out that I was so broke from having paid for my own education that I went to the Middle East to work and then subsequently met people from 33 different countries and had the opportunity from there to travel to many places around the globe. And being a little project kid, I was told none of that was going to happen. So I feel blessed and highly favored.
Absolutely. That is amazing. That is so what made you decide to travel to another country after you got your nursing degree? You became what were you like a what is it called?
Travel nurse.
Traveling nurse, a travel nurse? Okay. Tell me
Okay.
about it.
What happened was I was working in a burn unit in the middle of the night. I was a night shift burn unit nurse, and how I got to be working in the burn unit is a whole other story. But I was working there, and a recruiter called, a headhunter called in the middle of the night to say, we are looking for nurses who understand burns in Saudi Arabia. And are you interested in coming? And I was like, child, no, I haven't even been to South Carolina yet. You're talking about going to Saudi Arabia. That's ridiculous. And so I said, it doesn't make sense to me, but I knew I was working really hard. When I talked to my mom about it, she said, girl, you can't go over there. You're going to die over there. And I said, I'm about to die over here working these 2.5 jobs, trying to pay back these student loans and trying to be a parent. And so things happened. My older sister's husband had just been transferred to Germany. He was in the Air Force. They were having a life that they felt was really good. And she said, well, I'll be the one to take over the mommy duties while you get acclimated. And so things came together. I went to try to pay off my bills and to be able to go to graduate school to get a certificate, a degree in nurse anesthesiology. That was what I wanted to do, but that wasn't my path in the end. But I traveled to Saudi Arabia. I was there over 2 years. I worked with people from 33 different countries. I learned about religion, culture, and got the wanderlust from there.
I'm muted. That is amazing. It sounds like you've had an exciting life. I mean, it sounds exciting to be able to go to all these different countries and still help people by being and just think and the thing is, it sounds like you had no idea why things were happening the way that they were, like being in the burn unit. Who would have thought? And you're thinking, why am I in this burn unit? And that goes to show how God has other plans. He said, I know the plans I've had for you. plans to prosper you and not to harm you. And it really sounds, in reading your bio, it sounds like your life has been led and guided, led and guided. I mean, and it's exciting that you've been to over 60 countries. Oh my God! And doing work as in nursing and the medical field the whole time. Okay, well, let's talk about that.
Okay. Well, I was very involved in the understanding of how, when we don't understand the culture of people, and the culture might be about language, religion, country of origin, it might be about gender, it might be about generations, we may not be able to do a good job for them. And by that time, I was working in an academic medical center and had some responsibility for making sure that new immigrants and refugees coming into the city had the ability to interact with the university, and that first generation students understood how to get in the university. And at that point in time, I was working in Omaha, Nebraska, and there were a lot of people who came in from the southern Sudan. And when they came in, they oftentimes would say, uh, Valda, why is it that these doctors treat us as badly as the people we ran away from in war? And the doctors would say, Valda, why are these people acting like we're as terrible as the people they ran away from in war? And my answer was, I don't know. I mean, ultimately, it was, I don't know. And so I set out to find out what was going on. I wanted to have an understanding of the lives of people in refugee camps. And so I didn't go to the southern Sudan because it was much too dangerous. But I had the opportunity to go to Ghana, and I worked with an agency called Unite for Sight, where it was our responsibility to help people get their vision back, or at least get them glasses or cataract surgeries. But most people who have been going in and doing those kind of things, you hear about people having mission trips. And what they would do is drop in for a couple of weeks, do some things, and leave. But I decided that I wanted to go for 12 weeks because I felt like I would not understand the refugee experience at all. Because for 2 weeks, I'd just be counting the days. Okay, 14, 13, 12, on down to one. But with 12 weeks, so when I got there, I had the opportunity to learn more about the people, about the problems, and to develop some programs that would last, that wouldn't leave when the helpers left. And that was my first time in Africa. And then I got to go to other places where there had been war, and where there had been the tsunami of 2004 that killed nearly 250,000 people in the blink of an eye around Indonesia and Sri Lanka. I got to go there. That was really tough when you imagine the loss. But those set me up to understand that I'd love to be in places. I love to find the argument that works. I love to make myself vulnerable enough to say, I don't know, and please tell me. Give you permission to say, please tell me if I say something that hurts your feelings, or I'm doing something wrong culturally. If, as a woman, that is not allowed here. And that just gave me the opportunity to learn so much about so many people, because I was willing to fail in order to succeed.
Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing. And to think you were able to create something and keep it there for for sustainability. That is amazing. What would you say were I know that just the poverty and being around illness and that kind of thing was quite a challenge. But what would you say was what I would like to know? What was your greatest reward in doing the work that you did, and also your greatest challenge, and how you overcame that challenge?
Okay, the greatest challenge, I guess, would have been being inconvenienced by the heat. When I was in the refugee camp, it was 90 degrees, 100 degrees. There was no electricity, no running water, no roads. Everything was different. And of course, being accustomed to having just regular comforts, not, I had nothing. So I was there at a time where, hot flashes might have been really flashing, and we are flashing, and it is hot, and water had to be trucked in. And so sometimes you wouldn't know if water was going to run out in the middle of your shower, which, was a different kind of shower. And I would always keep some water around, say maybe twice as much as this around, so that if the water ran out, I might have enough to rinse off whatever the soap was. And I'd start with the shampoo in case I didn't want to have a whole bunch of soap in my head and the water was gone. It was hard to tell. There was no electricity, so therefore there was no air conditioning. Woohoo! Hot flashing and no air conditioning. And water had to come in. There were little packets, they called them sachets, but they were about this size. And ultimately, everything was different. And even though it was different and sometimes difficult, I didn't find it distressing. For me, my grandmother had always been a person who lived the way she lived, period. And so when we went to her house, it was like the United Nations there. The way she acted was the way we had to act, and we couldn't have food if she wasn't feeding us. And so I had become accustomed to understanding that it's not my house, but that's okay. I can go back to my house when I get ready, but I can also have fun in this house that's not my house. My greatest reward was learning so much. So much. I love it when people have that aha moment. When people who had been literally running away trying to live had to leave everything there, had to run with just the clothes on their back, had to give up any money that might have been in a bank or stashed somewhere. And a lot of them lost people, and many of them had permanent disabilities and especially visual problems. And that's why I was there. But I learned from them. And one of the things they said to me was that they thought I was going to leave. And I guess they'd had many people who would come in and out and didn't stay because there were harsh conditions. And I said, "Why do you think I'm going to leave? Have I given you any indication that I'm going to leave?" And they said, "But we think you're going to leave us." And so I asked the lady who was like my caretaker, the person over my housing, "Why do they keep saying that?" And she said, "Well, when they're saying they think you're going to leave us, they mean they think you're going to die." I was like, "Well, why?" I'm trying to be really healthy. I mean, there were some diseases that could take you out over there, malaria, not the least of which, some things with black flies that could make you itch yourself to insanity and suicide, as many people did. But what they meant was all I did was work. I got up early. I started working before the sun totally came up. I came back at the end of the day and they said, "You're working yourself to death." And I thought, there's 70,000 people here and I have a lot to do, even though I have 12 weeks, a lot to do. And they said, "When you die, there will be no one here." And so they made me realize that I have to stop and pay attention and provide self care. Imagine refugees telling me to take care of myself.
That's phenomenal. Telling you to take care of yourself. That is phenomenal. Oh my, so you never had any health issues while you were over there? That's amazing. That
Now,
is amazing.
I'm I'm lucky, blessed, fortunate that of all the places I've ever been, the last time I was in Africa, I felt bad, but that was when the pandemic was starting. Oh, well, we didn't know about COVID, so whether I was exposed or just stressed about the whole thing. And, but I never have been hospitalized anywhere else. I barely ever had to go to see a doctor anywhere else. And I think that all these years of being a nurse helps to develop an immunity because if we don't have a strong immune system, we can't work where we are in the middle of infection and being under stress all the time, working bad hours and having people mad at you because they're in the worst shape of their lives at the moment. It's not you. You just happen to be there while they're feeling miserable. So I never was sick. Actually, I got sick in the Virgin Islands, but not in some of the places you would expect.
Hello to Keisha. Thank you for joining us. And I know that she's going to share some things because one of the things that we want to talk about, which is so important, the fact that we oftentimes rely solely on what doctors tell us without either questioning them, getting additional opinions, or even researching what it is that they're telling us. And I know that that's one of the things that is of very significance to you. And so that's one of the things we're going to talk about. I do have a commercial that I need to do. So I'm going to go to the commercial and then we're going to come back and talk about that. Where we have another comment coming in. She says, yes, we must listen to our bodies. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, you know what? Since she's here and she's saying we must listen to our bodies, I'm going to give, because I can do my commercials whenever I want to do them. The spirit is saying, let's continue with this conversation, especially with her saying, listen to our bodies. So I'm going to give you the floor again and let you share some things.
The most important thing is to listen to what our body is telling us. Are you listening to what your body is saying? Your body, when we tune in, when we are paying attention, can really, really give us some really good clues about what's going on. When I was working in that camp and working so many hours, I was tired when I woke up. I was tired when I went to sleep. I was tired all day long because I wasn't getting enough rest. And many times we can decide to put all that burden on ourselves and no one else is asking us to. But here in the States where we have access to all sorts of care, the number one thing is to pay attention, know your numbers, know what's normal for you. For instance, if your normal blood pressure or normal blood pressure is under 120 and under 80, but if your normal blood pressure is 100 over 60, your healthcare provider needs to treat you according to it changing, not just what is the norm in that bell curve. If you are feeling tired all the time, and with COVID, it's been so difficult, so many people have had these lingering symptoms and syndromes. But if you're feeling tired all the time, your body may be saying, please help me. Please find out what is going on. That's when you go in and you ask for tests. And if people just keep saying, well, of course you're tired, you need to sleep more, and maybe you can't sleep, and that's the problem, then ask, what else can we do? Don't be satisfied with someone telling you, we don't know what it is, and let's just wait 6 months and see if it gets better. The other thing is, what are you doing to take care of yourself? In the middle of rushing around and doing these things, and at one point I was making at least 10 international trips a year and being diamond, platinum, or whatever on everyone's airlines. I had to learn how to find time to sleep, to rest, and to get decent food. Sometimes I would just have like an allergic response, which I'm rarely allergic to anything. But then I had to learn how to walk in, what things are my triggers. Actually, dust is a trigger for me. That's bad. But I was trying to ignore it, or I just take an antihistamine and keep going. But finally, I went to get some tests, or I said, please test me. Let's see what's going on. And we found out exactly what my triggers were. And then I found out what to do about those triggers. If you have things like stomach aches, if you're having diarrhea, if you're having nausea and all those things all the time, they may be what it seems to be, a simple stomach upset, or you have to recognize that some things can be referred. So you might have pain in one place and it's not an indication of what's going on. For instance, heart attack is the number one killer of all people in the United States and probably in the world. However, Women are less likely to be taken seriously if they show up at the emergency room because their heart attack might not look the same. For many people, they're expecting that a heart attack is going to be this pain in your chest or stuff running down your arms, you're sweating, you're red faced, but that may not be happening for women at all. What may be happening is that they just feel tired, or they have jaw pain, or they're feeling a little nauseated, but we're feeling like we're parents, we're taking care of our parents, we are working, we are doing 15 things that, oh, that will go away. But you have to listen to your body, pay attention. And when you start to see that things are not like they need to be, start to keep a journal so that when you do get to see a healthcare provider, you'll be able to say, this started 3 weeks ago, 10 days ago. It's not getting better. This is what makes it worse. Maybe I feel better if I lie down, but I feel bad if I'm sitting up. Maybe it's worse when I'm stressed. Maybe it's worse if I eat certain foods. These are clues you take to this provider who acts like a detective, but you have to know yourself and you have to take that information to them so they can help you. That's super important.
Yes, that is just amazing. And also, and as you were talking, I was putting this stuff in the chat so that people can remember what's being said. Keep a journal on how you're feeling to take to the provider. That's where I was at when you stopped talking. So anyway, yes, all these things that we're saying to you today, please take heed. I remember I had three doctors tell me I would never have kids. Three of them. One said that I would need corrective surgery, but that it was possible. So after I got married, I did have the surgery and I did have a child. And so if I had listened to those other two doctors, I would have just never known. And so getting second opinions, I'd like for you to kind of talk about that as well, and the researching things to make sure that what's being said to you is in fact true, and if it's the only remedy to your situation.
Yeah. Number one person is not the end all be all. We have become accustomed to the paternalistic nature of healthcare, where we have an expectation that the person knows everything and the person giving the information expects that you will accept what they have to say. Now, that's not completely the only thing that's going on, but what's important is that you become a part of your care team. As Vera was saying, she went for her second and third opinion and ultimately had the blessing of becoming a mother, but she might not have. As a matter of fact, interestingly, I was told I would never be a mother. They were wrong. And I'm glad they were, but understand that healthcare is a bit of a practice. That's why, it's just an old saw that is a practice and they do the best that they can. But it takes a lot of information. If you have something going on and you don't tell them because you're sitting there hoping that they will figure it out. And let me say that men are terrible about this when they're getting into the nether regions and they don't want to talk about what's going on or what is not happening. They go into the doctor's office hoping that some test that they're doing will say to them, I am not able to do what I would like to do in my reproductive regions. And so they don't say anything, or they might say, they might not say, I'm having trouble going to the bathroom, which might mean they're having an enlarged prostate. And they might not say that, oh, I feel more tired. Whatever it is, certain people are less likely to say what's going on. sometimes because they're afraid that whatever the symptom is might mean there's something worse. Say, for instance, you have a history of cancer in your family. You find a lump in your breast. We have breast cancer in my family that's taken many people, unfortunately. But if you are finding a breast lump while you are just giving yourself a bath, or you're putting on your bra and it just feels a little strange, and you just think, I'm not going to go check this out because my grandmother died of this, my mother died of this, my sister died of this. And instead of, number one, doing your research to show, say, for African American women are less likely to have breast cancer, but they're more likely to die from breast cancer. And part of that has to do with them waiting longer to go to check on it. But it's not even just that. Sometimes it's because they're not taking seriously, but sometimes it's because they find it and they feel like if they don't check it out, maybe it'll go away, or they're just in denial. So you have to do your research about what your family issues are. You have to do the research that the person you're going to see is the person you need to see. Every generalist is not the one that you should accept answers from, and make sure they know everything that you can tell them so they can help you be better.
That is so valuable. All this information is so valuable. Cancer runs in my family as well, and I've been taking care of making sure I had mammograms, and it's particularly mammograms since I was in my 30s. Got one coming up next week, as a matter of fact. But yes, it's so important that we recognize and understand our family history. I'm amazed and surprised that we have so much similarities. Yes. So anyway, being able to recognize when you have little things that may be going on that you're not familiar with. Don't just let it slide, and the journaling that she talked about, this is powerful stuff that she's sharing with us right now. And so many times we could be preventing major issues. And another example, like both my sisters died of cancer. One had breast cancer. The other died from ovarian cancer that could have been avoided because her doctors, understanding our history, when I needed a hysterectomy, my doctor was very clear and said to me, given your family history, I am recommending you have a complete, because if you don't, you may come back. My sister, on the other hand, when she went, she had a partial, and the doctors never said anything to her about family history. And I am convinced that had she had a complete, she was 7 years younger than me. If she had had a complete, she'd be here today. And so this is stuff that's so important. This is important stuff. Don't just take what a doctor says to you. And if you have history of certain illnesses in your family, don't let the doctors tell you the have-to stuff. All right, we're gonna go to a commercial this time for real.
Mama Knows creates high quality products that are available to be used on multiple textures of hair. Her goal is to bridge the gap to stop people from having to use multiple products because of families with multiple hair types. Her products are currently being used on men, women, children of all ethnicities. Mama Knows products are available at www.mamaknowsproducts.com. That's www.mamaknowsproducts.com. You can also find her on Instagram at Mama Knows Products because, Mama knows what you need.
Mama knows what you need. And let me tell you, these products are wonderful. They smell great. And we're talking shampoos, conditioners, hair serums, moisturizers. And they're for all ethnic groups. They're for kids as well as adults, men as well as women. You want to check out Mama Knows Products.com because Mama knows. Okay. All right. So we have another comment coming in. Okay, she said a couple of things. One, genetic testing and research studies work, and Lakeisha happens to be my niece, and it was her sister her mother that I was talking about, but she just had an incident that happened. Keisha, can I share your incident? Put in the chat, yes or no. Okay. Anyway, and she's like, you have to start early. You have to start early. Yes. And with her mother, they left one ovary for her hormone, when in actuality, now my sister was really private, so we didn't even know that she had a partial one until after the fact, because had I known, I would have insisted, you need to have a complete, but anyway, God knows best. And my niece here, she just had a situation that is unbelievable. But I'll wait until she gives me notice because it's her story. Well, she said yes. Okay. My niece, she was diagnosed with cancer. This doctor was just emphatic about getting her started with chemo and all this stuff right away, And so she started the chemo. She had 5 rounds of chemo. And another doctor tells her she never had cancer. 5 rounds of chemo in her body. And she never had cancer. So now she's had all this poison put into her for nothing. And she wants to remind me she's 40 years old.
Wow. So important to know is to get that second opinion. Yeah. So unfortunately we have feedback.
Let me.
Yeah, I apologize to the listeners. We don't know why. We tried to work out this tech issue, but it just wasn't to be. But we figured out a system. So the one reason we're not having a conversational style thing is because Vera has to go off because of the sound. But the most important thing is anytime you get a diagnosis of something so important like that, get a second opinion. Especially if, I believe the healthcare providers in general do the best that they can every day to do the best for you. But again, anyone is potentially fallible. And the most important thing you can do is say, I want to get this checked out by someone else. And if that someone else, after you've done your research to see that they are the people who know about your problem, say yes, then you have more confidence in what's going on. I'm sure no one wanted to give chemo for no reason, and there may have been some indicators that something was wrong, but they dealt with the wrong thing or something that might have been temporary instead of something like cancer. I can tell 15 stories myself even as a registered nurse with graduate degrees, who was an assistant professor at a university, who was a director at an academic medical center, sometimes I have to fight to get people to pay attention to what I'm saying, to make sure that when they start with the treatment, it's the right treatment for me. I've had folks say to me, you need to take this medicine, you need to be on this therapy, you need to do whatever. And I might say, hang on a minute, let me check with my people, because I know people. Number one, I have colleagues who can help me. I have had the great fortune of being around some of the best medical minds, the best nursing minds in the world. And so I can just say, I got this diagnosis. Or worse, I didn't get a diagnosis at all. I keep feeling bad. And they say, well, what about? And then I can go back to what about? It's really sad to think that someone could misdiagnose, and because of the way cancer therapy is, there's so many people involved. You know, they're the people who are giving the medication, they're the lab technicians, there are probably some radiologists, other people who are involved. This happens. But this day and time, and what I'll say to all of you out there is, recognize that you have to say, I want to know more. I want to know what are the other options. Say, for instance, they thought she had breast cancer. And then they determine, we're going to remove your breast and we're going to give you radiation and chemotherapy. And then later find out there was no cancer. Now you've removed part of the body. If it would have been reproductive, they could have given her a hysterectomy and she didn't need it. And how can you go back to say, oh, I'm so sorry that we've taken away any possibility that you can have a child, because we were wrong? And again, healthcare providers work really hard. They study really hard. They do the best they can. However, since the pandemic especially, 20% of healthcare providers left the field. They just said, no, we're out. You know, they were working hard. They had all this stuff going on with the pandemic. So we have typically been pretty short of healthcare providers in most professions. And now you have a pandemic that lasts 3 years. You have people who said, I put myself in harm's way every day. I got sick. My family got sick. I brought this home and I'm not doing it anymore. And they weren't necessarily treated the way they should have been by the administrative people. So now you have fewer people who know what they're doing. And some of the ones with the most knowledge were the ones who said, look, I'm kind of old. I might have less of an immune system to take over this disease. And so I'm out. And this didn't just happen in healthcare, but it's most critical in healthcare. So we really, 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 really have to be our own best advocates to say, okay, you say I have cancer. Tell me what kind of cancer. Tell me why you think I have this cancer. Is it genetic? Is it because I've been exposed to toxic chemicals? And I'll give an example. When I was working in Sri Lanka, it's an area that's very wet. It's tropical, but it's like super, super wet. And my housing was in a place where there was a canopy of trees, and that kept the housing cool. However, it also kept the damp in. So at the end of a week being in that place, sorry, my colleagues and I were pulling things out from under the bed, or actually we had just been trying to wash out our underwear and dry them on a rack inside. They never got dry. And we didn't even understand how wet it was there. And we had made it worse because we closed off things because of the mosquitoes. So when we pulled out our tennis shoes at the end, they were like fuzzy. And when I got back home, I started with this. So they checked me out. They saw something in my lungs, and they were like, "Oh my God, maybe you have cancer." And now I've been all these places that have all sorts of bad stuff going on, bad water, insects that can cause problems. And so they were like, we need to start some treatment. And then I said, whoa, 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 whoa. Now, my family history is that my mother died of lung cancer, and there have been a bunch of smokers around me. Fortunately, I never smoked, but I had been afraid of lung cancer. And they're saying, well, Valda, with your history, we need to do this. We need to be very aggressive. And I just said, And fortunately, I had a really good primary care doc. And I said, who can I talk to? She says, let's talk to this person who's a surgeon. The surgeon wants to cut. Let's talk to this person who uses meds. This one wants to infuse you. And now let's talk to a third person. And they said, let's wait. Let's scan, measure, and wait. Because the least thing they would have been able to do is stick a needle in to try to pull things out or to do a biopsy, which could put my lung down, cause pneumonia, cause all sorts of stuff. And so in the end, we waited and it went away. They were seeing all this stuff, like it was basically like neon signs. Look at this stuff in your lungs. But we waited. We took the cautious approach and it went away. And if it had not, I was totally prepared to do whatever. But because I had access, because I had knowledge.
Yes. And oh my God, so many stories. And you talking about asking for other alternatives. I had, I'll be 70 in November, and I'm not on any medications whatsoever. None. Thank you, Lord. But at one point, there was a doctor my primary care doctor was telling me that my blood pressure, she was concerned about it being elevated, and also said that if I didn't do things like lose some weight or something, that she may have to consider me going on medication. So my first question to her was, what can I do other than take medication to bring my blood pressure down? And she happens to be an Indian doctor from India. And she said to me, she says, well, in our culture, we use a lot of turmeric, and turmeric will help lower your blood pressure. So I want to recommend you start. Now, see, if I hadn't asked her, had I not asked her, I probably would be on high blood pressure medicine. But because that's why it's so important that you ask. My niece is asking if I'm sensing she wants to talk to you. Because she's saying, I would like the information for the people to get a third treatment, please. And then wanting your opinion. And so I would love to be able to connect you guys if possible. All right, you got it. It's going to happen, Lakeisha. It's going to happen. Thank you. And it's just I cannot express from my own personal experience how important it is that we check ourselves, that we ask questions, that we seek second and third opinions. Don't just let and see with Lakeisha, because I kind of am familiar with what was happening. The first doctor was so emphatic. I mean, just so did not want her to get a second opinion. Did not want her. Because she was, sharing all this stuff with me. And I told her, I said, you need a second opinion. You need to go and seek additional help. And she did. But in the meantime, they place such urgency on her having, because she has fibroids, but they're all benign. And so anyway, we're talking medical stuff here. But we can't impress upon you. And I know this show is evergreen, so people will hear it over and over and over again. We cannot impress upon you enough. Second opinions, third opinions, ask questions, set up a journal, and that you're monitoring how you're feeling and what's going on with your body, and taking notes so that when you do go to a doctor, you can say, I noticed this change, I noticed that change. We have to take responsibility for our own selves.
Yeah. Right. Something really important is ask to see your labs, whatever they have, whatever diagnostic test they've done. ask to see it. And sometimes it's going to look like Greek, but ask to see it and ask for it to be interpreted. The other thing you can do is if you have a whole bunch of numbers and things, just say, what is the thing here that shows that I have cancer? Let them make a copy of it. Let them circle it, because then they have to think about it again, and let them give you that document that they've circled. Then that's your proof, if you need it, that you asked them, they thought through it again. Just to tell you how things work in healthcare, even in medication, we have to ask ourselves, is it the right time, the right dose, the right patient for the right thing, given the correct way? There are 5 R's. So is this a medication that should be given as an injection? Should it be given by mouth? If I have to give an injection and I'm pulling up 2 or 3 ampules, that means something is wrong. And it should not ever be that I have to pick up 2, 3, 4 little tubes of things to give you one injection. That means there's probably been a miscalculation. If they're narcotics or other sensitive drugs, there's a second person to look at it. So already in the healthcare system, we're set up to do first, second, and third checks on things. So anytime a person pushes you to get something done right away, I want to say it can wait a week. Unless it's an aneurysm or something where they're saying if you don't get this thing, you're going to die because there's blood leaking out into your brain or something, or your heart is damaged and we have to go in and fix it. You still have time that day for someone to come in. Unless your life is eking out that second, you still have time. And any person who doesn't want you to have a second opinion, be worried about them.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I had a doctor who wanted to do breast surgery on me. And I was like, I don't have, first of all, I've already had a mammogram and there's nothing wrong, but I have like there's an issue that's been an ongoing issue from the time my son was born, and at the time he was in his 30s. Okay, and so I was saying to the doctor, it's not bothering me, so why should I bother it? I've already had my mammogram, but this woman was so emphatic to the point where she started yelling at me and screaming at me, and I told her, I said, it's not bothering me. I am not putting, and I was on my way to Kentucky to be with my baby sister. It was the same during the same time that I was supposed to be leaving Ohio. And they're trying to force me to have surgery when I'm not feeling any pain. And not, you have to be leery.
Let me say, and sometimes pain is a very late symptom of things. So I just want to clarify that. Pain is not always the reason why you should act. Like for cancer pain is late. It's a late sign. And the physiology of cancer is that our cells are supposed to have a certain amount of time where they grow, and then they're supposed to die and go away. But in cancer, they just keep growing, and they grow faster than they die, and then they start taking up space where they shouldn't be. And our bodies are kind of set up where there's not a lot of extra space for things to be happening. And when it gets to be big enough, pressing upon something or going into an area that is even more sensitive, maybe it's blocking something, that's when your pain starts, right? But that's really late. So I just wanted to clarify, and just because you don't have pain doesn't mean that you don't need surgery. However, if you had a long-standing problem that has not been affecting your health and welfare and is just showing up on a scan, I would be very hesitant to do that.
Amen. Absolutely. Amen. So, all right. Can you believe we only have 5 minutes left? And I wanted to share your books. And I do need to do another commercial, but I'm going to hold off on that because, no.
No, go ahead.
Let me do this. Okay, let me go back to it. Yes. Okay, here it is. Joy 365, a devotional for joy restoration. If you are interested in possibly putting your devotion in this book, she's looking for 365 people to do one devotional per day. If you are interested, contact Vernessa Blackwell at vrblackwell@gmail.com. Vernessa Blackwell, and that's vrblackwell@gmail.com. Contact her so that you can be an inspiration and an uplift and an encouragement to somebody else. All right. Well, listen, I can't believe we've only got 3 minutes left. And I really wanted to pull up a couple of your books. This one you got. This is the book that you were a part of a medical team when you gave some information. I'm just going to throw them up here. This is her romantic novel. Yes, she did get one done. Are you going to be doing another? Awesome.
Absolutely.
You want to talk a little bit about this one? I know we don't have a lot of time.
Well, basically, what it is just because I'm an intimacy specialist, a reproductive health specialist. I was just writing stories for people to relax their minds before they got home.
Okay, awesome. So you can find these books on Amazon. And then we have Elevate. Now is this one of the collaboratives that you did?
A podcast, yeah.
Oh, okay, this is your podcast. Okay, awesome. But you also have another podcast, and I thought I pulled it up here. And I know we only got a few seconds, but that podcast is really important. So talk about what it is that you do with that podcast.
Okay, that podcast is called Healthy Mothers, Healthy Babies, Healthy Communities, and it's to help educate people so that we can decrease infant and maternal mortality. You may not know it, but the United States has the worst infant and maternal mortality rates in the world, in the developed world, and that means more babies dying and more mothers dying. And when you look at what's going on with African American women and their babies, it's just a shame. It can be 2 to 3 times worse than for white women in the country. And there are a wealth of reasons why, but again, what you don't know can kill you. So get to know your doctors, get to know your healthcare providers, and be an advocate for yourself. If it doesn't feel right, it ain't right. So make sure somebody pays attention.
And amen. If it don't feel right, it ain't right. You got that? If it don't feel right, it ain't right. Something's got to be done about it. So we're going to be tuning in and encouraging people to tune into your podcast because that's very important. The mere fact that our mortality rate is abysmal in comparison, and for us to be such a developed country and yet have our statistics that are just terrible, especially for African Americans across the board. Time's out for all that stuff. Don't get me started with that. Okay. Listen, thank you so much for being here. It's been a pleasure. I'm going to ask you to just hold on while I close us out, and I'll be right with you, okay? Listening audience, thank you so much for being here, and I want to encourage you to have a great weekend, and we'll see you on Tuesday.
The Vera and Thomas Show. 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 Let's talk about it. 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 On the Vera Thomas Show. Let's talk